What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Today we're going to show you exactly how to use a baitcaster. So you guys need to learn how to use a baitcaster. Maybe this is your first one that you purchased, or maybe you just haven't quite got the hang of it yet. Today I'm going to show you not only the ins and outs of using a baitcaster, but I'm going to show you how to cast one without even getting a backlash. Yeah, I know, I swear it's a thing. There is a way that you can dial one of these up so that when you cast it, it doesn't backlash. I don't have a lot of room here in the studio, so we're actually going to go out to the yard, buy the truck, and we're just going to show you how to use one of these. So I'll see you guys out there. Alrighty, so you guys bought your first baitcaster and you're looking to learn how to use it. These meant you kind of stepped up in the bass fishing world. You're ready to really get started bass fishing, but you're having a little bit of trouble. These are not easy to learn how to use. I'll be honest with you, when I bought my first one, I returned it at the store because I could not figure it out. It was super frustrating, and I don't want you guys to feel that way. So I'm gonna show you guys exactly how to use a baitcaster today, and I'm even gonna show you how to dial it in so that you don't ever get a backlash. I know that sounds crazy, but I do have a way that you guys can learn how to use one of these and just get it down without tangling up that spool. So really quickly here, let's talk about the reel. Let's break down the components of the reel, and then we'll show you guys how to cast it. So if you guys are looking at this reel right here in front of me, you will notice there are a few things kind of going on here. You have the reel or the grips that when you crank it, it reels the line in. You have a little dial right here. You have a button in front of the spool. Now all of these components are super important, and I'm going to show you guys exactly what they're used for, and you really got to learn how to use all of these together so that your reel works properly. But let's break out a camera that shows you guys my point of view, and I'll explain all of these to you so that you can better understand it, and you know, it's going to get you started fishing one of these really quickly. I promise you guys, I'm going to make it easy. It's going to be so easy, you're going to be a pro. Okay, so let's break down a baitcaster reel right here, right now. So we'll start with the simplest thing, and that is this button right here. You guys will notice if I click this button in, it'll release my spool. So this is what's going to be the button that's releasing and holding your line in. When you click it in, the line gets released, and when you reel, it snaps back over. So that's how you're going to control the line coming in and out of your spool. From there, you'll notice a dial on the left side of your reel. Well, if you're reeling right hand, it's going to be on the left side. If you're reeling with your left hand, it's going to be on the right side, but it's going to look the same. Now, most baitcaster reels will have either free and max on it, or they will have 1 to like 10. This is going to be your brake dial. So what this dial does is it controls how heavy or how light your spool is. Now, I know that sounds kind of foreign to you, but essentially if you turn it all the way to 10, or in my case, all the way to max, that's gonna put more pressure on your spool, meaning it's not gonna spin as fast on the bearing. Or if I turn it all the way to free or 1, it's gonna put a lot less on that spool and your line's gonna come out faster. Now, when you guys are fishing heavier lures, you typically want to turn that dial up. When you're fishing lighter lures, you're going to want to turn that dial down to like a lower number. I always fish mine in the direct center. That's the easiest for me, but you know, I've been using them for a long time and I know what works for me. So now if we turn the reel over, you will see a little knob here. This is going to be our spool tension knob. What this knob does is it's essentially going to either put more tension on the spool or less tension on the spool. Now, to make it as simple as possible, it's either going to let that spool spin really fast and freely, or if you crank it all the way down, it might not let that spool move at all. You adjust the tension by twisting back towards you to make it more free, or turning it forward away from you to make it more tight. Now this knob right here is very important, so you guys want to make sure you understand how this works, because it's going to be a huge factor in casting or maybe getting a backlash or not getting a backlash. And again, just like the other one, I'll show you guys where that comes into play. We're just talking about the reel here. And then right here by the reel itself, you guys will see this big spiky thing coming out the side of the reel. Bring it towards you. That's going to release your drag. Move it away from you. That's going to tighten your drag. The drag, when you pull on the line, it freely releases the spool. All right, so now that you understand what each piece is, we're going to show you how they come into play and how you use them. First things first, when you guys are learning how to cast, you're going to want to put some form of weight. I suggest using something heavier. This is a 1/2 ounce weight on here. It's pretty big, I know, but a little bit of weight's going to help you when you're learning, because bait casters aren't necessarily made for casting super light lures. So I have a 1/2 ounce on here, and this is just going to help, you know, demonstrate better. But if you guys are learning, that'll be fine for you too. So how we're going to use this thing is we're going to get it dialed in first. So to start, here's what we're going to do. We're going to actually crank all our dials. So if you look at the brake dial on the side, we're going to turn that all the way to max. And if you take this tensioner knobby, we're going to tighten it up to where it's almost tight. Now that I've done that, you guys will notice something here. When I click the button to release my spool, it doesn't move. That's because everything is super tight. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to leave this on max, but we're going to click our button down, and we're going to start with the tension knob. If you guys slowly back off on the tension knob, you guys will see that the spool is starting to move. So once again, when it's really tight, it doesn't move at all. If I click it back a notch, it's going to start moving. So that's exactly how that works. Now, to get dialed in, to start learning how to cast, what we're going to do here is we're going to tighten this up to where it's not moving at all, and we're just going to slowly back off it to not where it's freely coming out like that, but we're going to back it off to where the spool isn't exactly moving, but when you bounce that weight, line comes out. So as you guys can see here, I have my sinker reeled all the way up. I click my spool, nothing's coming out, but when I bounce the tip of my rod, line is coming out. So we're going to start there. That's kind of going to be what you want when you're learning how to use this thing. So we're going to start there. From here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to back this off 1 notch. So I was at max. If you guys are at 10, you're going to be at like 8 or 9. And you guys will notice here, it hasn't changed much. Internally it has a little bit, but it hasn't changed much. You're still kind of bouncing that rod, and it's still releasing your spool. If you guys dial it up this way, if you leave this heavy or almost all the way to max, and you leave your tension to where when you bounce the tip of your rod, it's releasing line, you will be able to cast this thing with almost never backlashing. So if you guys see here, when I cast it, I throw it out there, my spool stopped completely by itself. This is a big secret that I share with everybody. I guess I'm not going to say it's a secret, but a lot of people don't teach this, and it's going to make all the difference when you're learning how to use a bait caster. So again, I'm going to show you guys based on how I was dialed in. I tightened my tension knob all the way up, backed off to where I bounced that sinker, and it's slowly releasing line, and I'm leaving my brake dial almost at max. So I'll show you guys quickly here again. I'm going to click this, throw my line out there. I'm not even touching that spool, and it's landing perfectly in the yard. So that's a quick secret to showing you guys how to use one of these if you virtually have no experience and you don't want to get backlash. Now, if you guys don't know what backlash is, let me show you what happens when you don't have this dialed in right. So let's say we're not dialed in correctly. I'm going to put my brake dial halfway, and then I'm going to back off on my tension knob to where when I click that button, my line drops to the ground. You guys will notice quickly, if I let that lure hit the ground and don't touch that spool, look what happens. It starts doing this. No bueno. That is going to be what's known as a backlash. And what you'll have to do when you get a backlash is pull all the line out of your spool until it's even again. This could take a long time, and if it's bad enough, you might just have to restring that spool. So now I'm going to show you what happens if you guys aren't dialed in correctly. And hopefully I don't have to restring my spool after this, but if I throw it, you guys will see that, oh cow, oh no, you guys will see this happened. This is, again, no bueno. So you got to sit here and pull all your line out until you get that spool ready to go. You have to make sure that your spool is completely even and reeled in correctly. Otherwise, you're just gonna run into more issues. So I'm gonna pull this line out and continue to pull it out till my spool looks even again. And if you guys will notice, that's a lot of line. Then you gotta hold it, reel it back in, hope it doesn't tangle all up because it's coiled in there. And then you can restart again. So we're gonna show you guys how to cast it here, but I wanted to explain that to you right off the bat, how all those dials work and what they do, because it's very important when you're learning how to use one of these, if you wanna save money on line and not completely ruin it, that you learn how to do it that way. Okay, so I hope I didn't overwhelm you guys too much. I just wanted to go over the ins and outs of the reel itself so that you understand kind of how it works. Now let's talk about how to cast one of these, like exactly how to cast it. Ideally, the way a bait caster works is it works by you holding or releasing tension onto the spool. Most of the time when you're gonna cast a bait caster, you wanna rely on the tension of your thumb touching the spool. Your thumb is completely in control of how this reel releases line. When you click that button in, you want to click it in with your thumb, but hold on to that spool so that that line does not release anywhere. When you cast, the goal here is to try and lightly keep your thumb on the spool. Keeping your thumb on there is going to control the amount of line kind of going in and out of that spool, especially if sometimes you do get a little bit of a backlash. Your thumb is going to control that line from completely coming out of there. So that's a super important thing you need to try and get into the habit of, is keeping your thumb not really pressured on the spool, but just hovering over it so you can lightly feel that line so that you don't backlash. So again, I'm going to throw it and I'm just lightly resting my thumb on top of there so that that line doesn't coil out. Using your thumb is going to be the difference in controlling how that reel releases line. So if you do want to go lighter on all these, breaks and stuff here, like maybe we want to back it off to like a 4 or halfway, and I want to back my break off to where that bait is falling straight down, right? Your thumb is going to control all that tension and all that release on that line. Now, what you also need to do here is pay attention to where that lure is landing. When that lure lands in the water, you're going to want to try and stop the spool with your thumb. So I'm going to throw. I know it's about to hit. I'm going to stop it with my thumb. That's going to prevent backlash. It's going to prevent pretty much any kind of problem you might run into if you were to hit a tree or you were to have that break too loose. So it's not too crazy. There's just a few things that might be a little confusing, but once you learn how to use them correctly, you guys will be good to go. So to give you just a quick recap, because I know this might have been confusing, I'm not the best at explaining complex stuff here. If this is your first time using a bait caster and you just want to get the hang of it, crank that dial to almost max and adjust your tension knob to where that bait is only falling when you bob the tip of your rod. So if you can see here, there we go again, we're good to go. If you do this at first, you guys can cast all you want without running into issues. You just have to put a little bit more power into your cast. So once you have that down, this is where I encourage you to progress and get better. Everything's tight, you're good to go. The next thing you're going to want to do is back that dial off a little bit, release that tension just a little bit. A good rule of thumb when you're getting more advanced with a bait caster, when you put on a lure or a weight, try to set it so that bait falls to the ground, but the spool stops when it hits the ground. So we're at the point where I've moved past the rod bobbing. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to click that button. Okay, that sinker hit the grass and my spool didn't overdo itself. So now we're good to go. From here, this is where we're going to practice on really hovering that thumb. So I'm going to go ahead and keep that thumb right there on there and stop it before it hits the water or the ground. You're just going to keep on practicing this over and over again. The more you get the hang of it, the more accurate you get, you guys can start backing off that dial. Now, again, when you guys are fishing, always try to have that dialed in to where it hits the ground. You're good to go. If you have it too light, it might just backlash itself. And, you guys will just start understanding this. You kind of just got to get out there and really experience it, because that's the best way to learn, is just practice and experience. So, again, for one last time, I'm going to cast. over my head and just rest my thumb on top of there, stop it before it hits the water. Reel it straight in. Using a bait caster is all about understanding the pressure that these dials give off, as well as how heavy the bait you're using is. It all kind of goes hand in hand, and understanding how your brake dial, your tension knob work all together is gonna make you an expert at using this. So there you guys go. Dial in your bait caster, get out there, practice. I promise you, it will get easier. Sometimes it's frustrating, but if you have your reel dialed in to your bait, you guys should be able to get it done stress-free. So just practice, practice, practice. That's how you guys got to get it done, and don't get frustrated. When I got my first bait caster, it took me a while to really dial it down and figure it out. A lot of people get intimidated because they're just not good at using one, but that doesn't make you a bad fisherman. You just gotta practice, you gotta learn, and I promise you guys will be experts soon. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope it helped you out. If you guys have any questions, leave a comment down below. We'll try to get it answered for you. And hey, if you're new here, do me a solid and smash the subscribe button. We have all kinds of videos here that will teach you guys how to become a better fisherman, or maybe you'll just learn something you didn't know before. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.